Welcome to this edition of Thought to Action, presented by the Herb London Center for Policy Research. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, the president of the center. If you enjoy our content, such as this and other Thought to Action presentations, please like, share, subscribe, be sure and comment. Make sure you get our content out to others so they can see the great work we do. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and through our website, londoncenter.org. Today on Thought to Action, I'll be talking to Eric Caron about his book, Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. Eric had an extensive career, which I'll let him talk a little bit about, especially regarding his 5 to Survive tools, which are contained in the book. So Eric, without further ado, thank you for joining us today on Thought to Action.
Hey, Tony, what a privilege and an honor to be with you, sir. I look forward to sharing some hopefully helpful tips.
So Eric, one of the notable things that is great about you and your book is practical experience. One of the things that I think people do not acknowledge or actually record for purposes of training others is what actually works on the street. So just tell us a little bit about your background and what you were thinking to write your book.
Well, Tony, I spent 25 years as a special agent. I began my career in 1989 as a special agent for the United States Customs Service in Newark, New Jersey, where I had the ability to and the opportunity to investigate drug smuggling, proliferation involving Russia and Iran and China, money laundering, child porn, and a whole host of other international criminal topics. And then from there, I went to Washington, D.C. and was actually assigned to internal affairs for some time. I escaped internal affairs because nobody really wants to work internal affairs. I escaped internal affairs. Sometimes people call it, the Bureau calls it Office of Professional Responsibility. I escaped, went to the Washington, D.C. field office for a few years, again, doing proliferation, arrested the dean of Moscow State University, engineering for his attempt to acquire sensitive radar equipment for the, I think it was for the F-15, and went to Interpol in Washington. After 9/11, returned to the streets here in Boston, ran the National Security Group, worked closely with the Bureau on various national security terrorism cases, and then went overseas and was the attaché for Homeland Security investigations in Dubai, covering Oman and the Northern Emirates, as well as Iran, really focusing in on the threat that the Iranians pose. The great threat, in my humble opinion, is probably one of the most severe threat to not just the United States, but to the globe, is Iran. And their WMD program. And so I spent some time targeting, if you will, identifying and prosecuting individuals in the U.S. and in the UAE who were attempting to acquire sensitive U.S. technology for the Iranian WMD program. And I came back, retired as the resident agent in charge in the beautiful state of Rhode Island, and went to work for HSBC back in Dubai in the area of money laundering, helping the bank identify money launderers for HSBC. So that's a brief history of me, and I'll turn it back to you, Tony.
So that's a great background to actually get people to buy your book, because that's the thing. You have a great deal of experience. And let me point out the obvious, Eric, because sometimes the obvious is left unspoken and unacknowledged. You survived.
Yeah.
You're still here in one piece.
I don't have much hair left, but
that's expendable. That's to be expected. But my point being is that other than your hair, you're here in one piece. Yeah. And I think that's what I think people need to pay attention to regarding your instincts. And you even talk about in your book the God-given instincts that people tend to, I think, not pay attention to. And you actually go through and illustrate in your book one of those things which I find most interesting and most important is the 5 to survive.
Yeah.
So looking back on all the years that you've done these very complex, very dangerous operations, and I'd like to probably have you at some point come back. We'll talk more about the dangerous operations to the level you can, since you and I share that. I think that's another episode. But let's talk a little bit about this 5 to survive that you have in your book, if you could go through that for us.
Yeah. So my website, Tony, is switchedonlife.com, and I've written about the 5 to survive, the article there that people can go and do a deeper dive. But I think it's important just to back up a little bit about what's the foundation of being switched on. The foundation of being switched on in life is so very important to understand, because like any good organization or good home, you need the foundation. And so the foundation I learned from my Marine Corps father, who was uneducated, became a shoe shine boy in the 1940s to support his mom and his two siblings, and he joined the Marines. And he came back from the Marine Corps after serving in Korea, and he had 7 children, and I'm one of the 7 children that he had. And my dad taught me the 3 most important things in life that forms the foundation of being switched on. That is, number 1, strengthen the mind through education. It's your ticket to life's party. Without it, you're not getting in, period.
Right.
Education is key. I don't care if it's formal education, vocational education, whatever it is, educate yourself. It's important. Strengthen the mind. Strengthen the soul through faith. You're going to need it. Faith is so very important, Tony, because, it's faith is like wind. You can't see it, but you feel it. And you need that faith on those days when your mother dies, your father dies, your child dies. Life is tough. Life is full of chaos. Faith is important. And the third, if you will, element that my Marine Corps father taught me as the foundation of being switched on is strengthen the body. The body every day through the C philosophy: sleep, eat, and exercise. So basic, so true. Doctor, I'm not going to do a really good service about, I'm not a doctor, but we all know the importance of sleep. People have their PhDs in that and how it affects the mind and the body. In the same, so sleep, eat, and exercise is the core principle. That's, so those are the 3 core principles, if you will: the education element, the soul element, and the body element, right? Sleep, eat, and exercise. From there, once you have that foundation, then, only then can you go and be switched on in life. So if we have time to talk about the 5 to survive, Tony, I can go into it now if you wish.
Yeah, no, look, first off, I just want to second everything you're saying about the 3 core principles. The education thing, I have found complete blithering idiots who have 5 PhDs and know nothing about how life really works. So, I think the education issue is not one that makes you learned simply because you have been able to get a piece of paper that says you put some time in. I think it's much more important to be practical. And I think one of the things I've told both of my sons is never turn down an opportunity to learn something you've never done before, because you can never tell where it comes up. It can get to be beneficial. So I'm with you on that. Secondly, on the whole idea of faith, I think people don't understand the need to have a deep and abiding faith. I always look back at George Washington, the father of our country, when all circumstance showed that, man, he's not going to beat the British. It's just all odds are against him. He did it. And we wouldn't be here talking otherwise, using the American version of English had he not persevered with great faith. And then obviously the physical piece, I'm with you. I don't think one of the things I found most disappointing about the COVID outbreak is the lack of FDA or anyone emphasizing physical fitness as a primary defense against COVID. Let's face it, Eric, if you are physically fit, if you get sick, the chances of survival are far better, just in general. So I think those three elements as a core of your philosophy are important. So yeah, I'd like everybody to understand how important that is. And then if you could talk about the 5 to survive, yep, as a method of actually actioning those would be great.
Excellent. Yeah, Tony, I had COVID, and early on last year in March, early, when COVID broke for the, who knows when it really came out, January, February, March, but I had it in March. And sure enough, I pretty much bounced back within weeks. Right. I'm not saying I probably had a mild case, but guess what? I made sure every day, for the most part, I was moving and grooving. I wasn't laying down for days and getting sick and being depressed. I was out walking, and when I could do yoga, I did yoga. And so yeah, 5 to survive and the core principles really have saved my life. So number one, 5 to survive. So engage your senses and trust your instincts. It's that time of year, Tony. Holiday shopping is quickly, coming on here, where it will be Christmas before you know it. You go to the mall, you go to concerts. 5 to survive. Remember these 5 to survive tips. Number one, engage your senses and trust your instincts. So the essence of being switched on stems from our minds. Our minds. You control the mind, you train the mind, the body will follow. If you don't train the mind, potentially you die. So our minds control our bodies, include our sight, our hearing and smell, as well as our God-given instincts. So what I say is that we need to listen accurately as an owl, see with Clark Kent vision, and sniff out danger like a bloodhound. So you have these God-given instincts, use them, engage your senses. Number 2, scan the environment and devise a worst case scenario plan, keeping in mind that stressful events, that mind automatically scans the memory bank for a pre-planned, a plan that you have up in your P brain. So, and if you don't have a plan, you freeze. So just like when you get on an airplane, you identify your exits before you even take off from the gate. Why? Because the mind's going to go to that, your 4 or 5 seats from the exit. Because the mind's going to go to that plan that you've already rehearsed in your mind. So scan the environment and devise a worst case scenario, because you don't want to freeze when poop hits the fan. So identify your primary and secondary entrances and exits. Right. Make a mental note of that. That's important. I mean, too many people get hurt because they freeze and they don't know how to get out of a building or church, whatever it may be. Identify your primary, your secondary entrances, exits, and know where to go. Identify safe havens in your building or in your home. Identify safe havens on the street. Where am I going to go to escape a potential threat? I'm walking down the street. I'm switched on. I'm trying to identify potential bad guys walking towards me. Where's my safe haven? It may be, and all of a sudden I see gangbangers coming towards me. I'm gonna jump into that store right there. I'm gonna jump into that safe haven, and I'm gonna avoid that potential threat. We don't know for sure. So safe havens are important. Identify objects for cover and concealment when something bad is happening. Where am I going to hide? And do I need cover, concealment, understanding that, certain items will stop a bullet from penetrating. So I want to get behind something big that will stop a bullet from coming through. and hitting you, striking you like a refrigerator, you know. So basically understanding, where am I going? What am I doing? Or how am I escaping a threat is so very important. So that's scan the environment and devise a worst case scenario plan. That was number 2. Number 3, train yourself to scan the crowd, read people, practice, read people, and identify potential threats such as lone wolves dressed inappropriately. We see it all the time. I'm not saying anything that's, I need a PhD for, but we, unfortunately, we don't pay attention. We see so many cases that there's an individual on the top of a steps of a church. That happened last December. I saw the video. I'm sure you saw it too. He opened up at a cathedral down in New York City. Backpack on, and he's standing there by himself and, talking to himself, mumbling. And he came out with a weapon and he started shooting. And in his backpack, he had gasoline and other rope, and he was going to probably burn down that church if he could.
Yeah, no doubt.
So identify individuals that stand out. See something, say something. NYPD slogan, it's so true. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Identify, don't be afraid to be wrong. I mean, hey, I don't know, but hey, that guy right there has been standing there for the last hour, and I don't know, but he's acting strange. It's my God-given instincts. The back of my hair, neck, the hair in the neck stands up, and I'm like, well, that guy looks a little bizarre. And he's talking to himself, and he doesn't fit in quite. Maybe he's at a children's event. Who knows? But he's standing in the corner for the last hour. That's the type of person I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to call the PD. Maybe there's one on scene, and hey, he needs to be chatted with. I don't know who he is, but he's been standing there for the last hour. So, number 4, listen to and focus on your breath. Breathing during an active shooter or a traumatic event, just like a pilot does, fighting those G's. So you have to breathe like, breathe through it, because breathing helps focus you on your preconceived plan that you already have in the P brain. So breathing, as simple as it sounds, it's key. It's key to keeping you safe and going to your plan that's up here, and to forcing you to move out that door that you've identified as your safe haven. Where am I going? You can't move if you're not breathing. You gotta breathe. You gotta breathe. Breathing is key. It breaks that tunnel vision that I'm familiar with, and I'm sure you're familiar with, Tony. Number 5, the last one. It's, again, memorize this fact, repeat it over and over again. Make it your mantra, folks. My main focus is to identify the threat, a threat, avoid the threat, and escape the threat. So identify, avoid, and escape. Key. Period. Every time I'm out in public, I don't care where I go, and I'm not hypervigilant. I'm not walking around with my head, like I'm paranoid, but it's like brushing your teeth. When I leave my safe haven, my home, I know where I'm going, and I know when I arrive at that location, I know I'm identifying the threat, any threat, and I'm going to escape that threat. I'm going to avoid the escape. I'm going to identify, avoid, and escape that threat. I'm not here to engage the threat. I will if I have to, but our job is to live for another day.
Right. So, Eric, to that point, I think we would both agree then your street demeanor, the way you carry yourself, is a deterrent itself, by the fact that if you're actually look like you're actually paying attention, I know from my own personal experience, threats tend to not want to mess with people that they think are going to fight back. Am I correct on that?
100%. So I have a picture on my desk, Tony. I don't know. It's I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
So in the folks can't see it. I keep that picture on my desk, and it's lions in the bush. And these lions, some of them are obvious to see, some are not so obvious. Our job is to try to identify those lions in the bush that maybe not in the bush, but maybe up on the tree.
Yeah.
Because guess what? They're looking for soft prey.
Right.
They're looking at us. We're looking at them. And we have to let them know we see them. And we're going to harden ourselves before we leave our safe haven. We're going to, depending on how we dress and what we're doing, what we're wearing, they know we're switched on. And I've seen it way too many times on the streets in my 25 years. If you're not switched on, they think you're a soft target. They're going to make the approach. And the number one technique into you is not with a punch in most cases. It's this. The number one technique into you is to take you off your game.
Right.
So the chatting you up, ladies and gentlemen, on the street. Excuse me, can I use your phone? Excuse me, do you have $1? Excuse me, whatever it might be. That stopping you like that, it's like the used car salesman. He's got you now.
Yeah.
So what I say to people, do not stop on the street. Do not stop on the street. I see way too many times. You've traveled the world. I've traveled the world. And when I pick up that local newspaper, the first thing I see too often is people become victims, end up dead when they didn't have to. Too many women who go out jogging are not switched on. We know of cases here in the US, and it pains me because if they were switched on and didn't have the earbuds on and saw that car doing this to them 2 or 3 minutes ago, circling them, then they stop for the guy who gets out of the car, and then they die.
Right. No, I'm with you. And I think that's where, as you point out, we've always been taught as operatives to trust your instincts. Trust when you said that hair goes back on your neck. There's a reason for it happening. And this relates to the issue regarding situation.
Yeah.
So I teach self-defense to a number of close friends and family. Women, I try to instruct them on how to not only identify, but extract themselves if they come to find themselves in a situation. I mean, sometimes these things can creep up on you. With that said, being able to identify the situation and diverting at the last moment is very important. One of the things we've done, Eric, you've probably done the same thing, is we actually train our operatives in scenarios where we use something called simunitions. We train with weapons, and I'm not saying everybody has this capability, but I put people into scenarios where I force them to think, hey, I'm walking down the street, someone engages me, what do I do? Because if you actually have the ability to say, I've seen this movie before, I'm going to get out of it. I think that's very important. I think that's something you're saying here is like, really think through this. And if you can, rehearse it so you know what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So it happened to me. I was in beautiful downtown Wilmington, North Carolina, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, enjoying a street guitarist playing. Group of people came over watching, and I was with my former wife, and we're just paying attention. I see a guy who's kind of out by himself, not looking so switched on, if you will. He was talking to himself, what have you. So I put him in the pea brain, and we clapped, walked away, walking up the street about a block away. Who comes up running behind me and my ex-wife and breaks between us, and he says he's going to rape my wife. And I knew exactly who he was. As soon as he broke between us, I knew it. It came right to the front. And so I knew I acted. And I checked him once, and I talk about checking somebody. You don't have to check somebody, meaning I gave him a nice little shot to the chest with a loud voice, because your voice is a weapon.
Oh, yeah.
If you know how to use it. Your voice is a weapon, ladies and gentlemen, if you know how to use it. And we can talk about the voice in a minute. But I checked him, and I said, with a blood curdling no, get back.
Yeah.
And he stood back about 10 feet, and he's doing this to me. And I said to the guy next to me, I said, if he steps towards me again, call 911, because he's going to the ground. And that check, he walked away. That check, he walked away. And he knew I meant business. So yeah, it happened to me once in my personal life, but it saved me, of course, being switched on in my professional life as well. So as soon as I saw that guy, I knew exactly who he was, and I knew he wasn't, he wasn't playing with a full deck.
Right. So that's another thing too to consider, is like in an environment like that, should it have gone even further, I'm always fascinated, Eric, at the people who think that getting behind a car is going to protect you. So you talk obviously about being aware of the situation around you, the location. So I was always taught, like you, find a safe haven, find an escape route. But if bullets start firing, I don't think people understand the only safe places in the street are behind the axles and the actual firewall in a car. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because obviously I hate being around crowds, but at the same time, I have to be around crowds. Sometimes I have to speak. So I'm always looking for where can I get behind regarding shelter in case something happens. As a matter of fact, hint, we're going to want to have you back to do a live shooter event analysis at some point, but this is a good way of kind of preparing our thinking for that.
Yeah, I'd love to work close with you, Tony. It's again, it's an honor. Yeah, understanding cover and concealment is important. Most people don't understand that, concealment. Okay, you're going to hide. You're going to get under a desk. People are hiding under a desk. That's okay, but it's not going to stop a round from going through it.
Right.
And that the instant I talk about in New York earlier with the bad guy standing on the steps of a cathedral last December, I spoke about it on a show. The NYPD guys, and no disrespect to them, but they weren't behind cover. They were concealing themselves behind garbage cans.
Yeah. And
I got news for you. Garbage can's not going to stop a round from going through, but that's the only thing. God bless them. Again, but for the grace of God go I might have, if that's the only thing you can hide behind and jump behind, so be it. But understand, I know I'm behind something that's not going to stop a round from coming through. I might want to move. I might want to get behind a nice oak tree versus a garbage can.
So that brings us to the second to the last point regarding just listening and focusing your breath. So there's an old saying about keeping your head when others around you are losing theirs. And Eric, man, I tell you, I don't think people understand how important it is if you're just calm. Can I say the word Zen? If you can find Zen in that moment of trauma, you're way ahead of the game, right?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, listen, I've been involved, I don't know, a couple of instances where I could have died, quite frankly, without, that's no hyperbole. So I was involved in a shooting once during an undercover operation. In fact, the undercover was shot and paralyzed. I was there. I escaped a fire in Dubai at a hotel where I was living, and without me being switched on, without being in that breath and breathing through the traumatic 30 seconds, if you will, to a minute of a traumatic event, I wouldn't be here today. So the breath helped me break the freeze. And again, we've said it earlier, if you freeze, you potentially die. because you have seconds in some cases to act.
Right.
And so that breathing, like you're having a baby, if you will, or a pilot fighting those G's, you have to breathe through that traumatic event. And it's not like you're right. You're spot on. It's not like, we're not talking like, yogi, no, this is real. You better breathe or you die.
And to that point, and I guess to wrap it all up for the kind of the crescendo, if you will, of the concept, if you can get out, get out. I mean, one of the things I've noticed people, to your point, my job is to not take on the bad guy if you're there in your private, as a citizen. And I know a lot of people want to be brave. And the bravest thing you can do, Eric, in a situation where you're not actually armed or prepared to take on a threat, is to find the most convenient, effective exit. Keep your head, already have done the reconnaissance, so you know the exits, and just get out of there. I mean, that's what there's no shame in getting out to fight another day, right? I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely. And keep it in mind, I mean, I'm sure you preach this to folks. When you do, if there's an active situation, and God forbid, I mean, it's happening more and more these days here in America, trains, planes, automobiles, restaurants, hotels, malls, the odds, it may happen to you. So you better be ready.
Right.
So when you do exit that building, you're ready. Understand that police response in America is usually 3 to 5 minutes, give or take. So 3 to 5 minutes. So the odds are pretty good. 5-0 coming up on, we will be rolling up on the scene. You're escaping, your hands up, you're getting out of that environment, you're getting to a safe haven, you're exiting that building, hands up, identifying yourself as a victim. Hey, there's a shooter inside. What he's wearing, what he's doing, maybe the type of weapon. Be prepared to be, potentially patted down, maybe even cuffed. 5-0 doesn't know who you are.
Right.
So be prepared to be stopped by the police when you exit. Hands are up and trying to identify the bad guys shooting inside.
So it's all important. And I'd like you to think about coming back at some point in the near future, Eric, to talk about this, because I think not only are people not well versed in this, I don't think they understand that with just a little prep, with just a little street smarts, a little paying attention, you could increase the odds of your survival or the survival of those you love exponentially, because you're prepared and others are not. And I hate to say it like that, because that implies others around you are going to basically, they're going to suffer the consequences of not being prepared, but it is what it is, right? I mean, I hate to sound like it's like insensitive, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. So the lions in the bush are looking for soft prey, soft target. Yeah. I'm hardened. They're not going to pick me. They're going to pick you because you look soft, right? So I'm going to harden myself before I even leave my safe haven, and I'm switched on. My mind is like a radar. I'm boop, 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 boop. I'm locked on to a potential threat. I don't know for sure, but I see this guy or people walking towards me, and it's 10 o'clock at night. I walk across the street. I'm uncomfortable. Something's telling me something's not right.
Right.
And so I walk across the street. Avoidance is key. But it's more than situational. People call situational awareness. What does that mean? I don't disrespect anybody for saying that, but it's deeper than situational awareness. First, you have to understand the 3 core principles, because before you even get it switched on, you better understand the core principles. Because if I'm 100 pounds overweight, I'm not switched on when I leave my house.
Nope.
I can't identify. I can't avoid. I can't walk away. I can't run away. Run away if you have to run away. But if I'm 50 pounds or 100 pounds overweight, I ain't going anywhere. So it's so important that people understand the core principles first. It's a building block. Then, and only then, right, can we start to build on those core principles to be switched on out in the street.
Right.
5 to survive are basic, but so vital to your survival out there.
Right. So Eric, thank you for joining us today on Thought to Action. And ladies and gentlemen, it's Eric Caron, former diplomat and special agent, whose book, Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent, we've been discussing today. I highly recommend the book. Eric, you've got the website. Say your website again real quick for everybody to know.
Yeah, Switched On Life is the website, and folks can look at the podcast show and read the articles I've written in the last year or so, and read more about the 5 to survive.
Yeah. And we'll be talking more about that if you'll come back and join us again. So this has been great. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today for Thought to Action, presented by the Herblin Center for Policy Research. Please remember to hit that like button. Please share, subscribe. Be sure and tell others. Also, join our Patreon, where we actually allow for our sponsors, our patrons, to submit questions for our Ask Us Anything presentation we do once a month. So again, for Eric and myself, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again real soon on Thought to Action.